The U.S. Secretary of State says Afghan President Hamid Karzai fully supports Washington's strategy in Afghanistan. In an interview with CBS, Hillary Clinton said Karzai agrees that U.S.-led forces in Afghanistan are making progress. She also said the Afghan president only wants foreign forces to avoid actions that result in civilian casualties. This comes a few days after Karzai signed an agreement with the International Assistance Security Force during NATO's summit in Lisbon. The agreement ensures the presence of foreign forces in Afghanistan beyond 2014. Afghan lawmakers have criticized Karzai for signing the agreement. They say it's illegal and unpopular. Let's talk about this with Michael Preisner. He's an Iraq War veteran, joining me live from Los Angeles, California. Many thanks for being with us, Mr. Preisner. President Karzai used to criticize the U.S. policies in Afghanistan, particularly the civilian death toll, but it seemed that in Lisbon he had a different position. What is your take?
Well, President Hamid Karzai absolutely does not represent the Afghan people, because the majority of Afghan people want all foreign forces out of their country, and that's not the side that Karzai is on. What Karzai is having to do right now is maintain this balancing act between the interests of the United States government, which is the only reason he is in power, and if he loses the backing of Washington, he likely would not remain in power for more than a week. He was placed there by the United States to lead what the U.S. hoped would be a comprador puppet government that he was to be at the forefront of. And that's his position. But he's having to play this balancing act between continuing to curry favor with the U.S. government while at the same time handing out these kind of token criticisms of the most egregious acts of the U.S. government and the most heinous crimes of the U.S. military in Afghanistan to try to bolster support for an unpopular and widely unrecognized government in Kabul.
What is your take on the military indicators in Afghanistan? The U.S. military operations there, the drone attacks and the use of bases there seems to be indicative of a long stay there.
Well, I think we need to be very clear about this. The United States has no intention of ever leaving Afghanistan, just like they've never had any intention of leaving Iraq. George Bush and the politicians in Washington, along with the generals in the Pentagon, and really the CEOs in Wall Street and the bankers who sit above them, thought that Afghanistan and Iraq would fall easily and then become new bastions of U.S. interests where they could exert economic and military dominance, not just in those countries, but in the entire region, which is a region that U.S. imperialism longs to dominate. So what happened was they encountered unanticipated resistance in both Iraq and Afghanistan because of their kind of imperial arrogance. So the Pentagon and Washington never had any intention of leaving because they have key strategic, economic, and military interests in Iraq and Afghanistan, not just to exploit and steal the resources of those countries, but to exert military dominance over neighboring countries, Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Iran, all countries that are brimming with wealth that U.S. companies are currently off limits to, and having a base in Afghanistan and Iraq was precisely to get access to those markets that were once off limits to U.S. businesses. So when we hear these withdraw deadlines of, before it was July of 2011, that was what President Obama kind of pleaded with the public to accept when he announced the vast escalation of the war in Afghanistan, a war that's becoming increasingly unpopular. That date has now been thrown out the window, and now we're being told that maybe in 2014 we'll see some change in mission, but U.S. troops will still be in combat for years to come. And as the top civilian NATO person in Afghanistan said, we should be expecting, quote, eye-watering levels of violence through 2015. That doesn't mean eye-watering for the generals or the politicians in Washington. That means eye-watering for the U.S. troops who are being sent on constant deployments, for their families who are watching them come home in coffins and wheelchairs, and of course, especially eye-watering for the Afghan civilians who are being really massacred at the hands of the U.S. occupation.
We're talking about coming home. They're talking about 2011 as the date, the year in which the drawdown will start. In the very unlikely event when these soldiers go back home, with the U.S. having the biggest number of troops in Afghanistan, they're going to need jobs when they go back home. In this economy, is the U.S. ready to bring the troops back?
Well, in the United States right now, we have about 30 million people who are unemployed. Not unemployed because they don't want to work, but unemployed because those jobs do not exist. And jobs continue to be lost every single month. So no, they don't have jobs for those soldiers when they get home. But I think that's important to really clarify that the withdrawal is not in 2011. It's not in 2014. What Obama has said and what the Lisbon conference just made very clear is that in 2014 they hope to maybe change the role of U.S. and foreign troops in that country right now. That doesn't mean a withdrawal. That doesn't mean a downscaling the operation. That just means hopefully they can redefine the mission in 2014. What that means is that U.S. soldiers and Afghans alike will continue to be killed, maimed, and displaced at the hands of the occupation with really no end in sight. The United States military will remain in Afghanistan as long as it takes for them to establish permanent military and economic centers in that country, and will only leave when the people of Afghanistan and the people of the United States rise up and kick them out, which is what's happening in Afghanistan right now, and I think what is increasingly happening in the United States as well.
One more thing, very quickly, Mr. Preiser. The U.S. military has taken bids from private war contractors to secure and ship massive amounts of U.S. military equipment through sensitive areas of Pakistan into Afghanistan. Is Afghanistan, do you think, a launch pad for other war aims?
It absolutely is. That's why it was kind of a key strategic region for the United States, why they jumped on the opportunity to use the pretext of 9/11 to invade and occupy the country. Afghanistan neighbors extremely oil-rich countries. It's a strategic military point for the United States to exert dominance over the most strategic region in the world for U.S. imperialism.
Iraq War veteran Michael Preiser speaking with us from Los Angeles. Thank you so much, sir.